Hi, everybody. Eve Harrow, Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network. I am in one of my favorite places on an absolutely beautiful morning. It is Thursday, June 20th, 2019, and I'm up in Tel Shilo grabbing Dr. Scott Stripling just as they're finishing up this year's dig. Just doing some restoration work and things today. He's going to tell us about that. So, first of all, Scott, great to see you again.
Thanks, Eve. It's great to be with you.
So, I interviewed you last year. You had some incredible finds. What went on here in the last month?
Okay, well, we had a very large team working here for the last 4.5 weeks, and we just have a couple of days left. We've continued to expose the storage rooms. You can look down at those right now from the period of the Mishkan, and beneath those we have earlier storage jars. So apparently the Israelites are continuing to use the infrastructure that was already here.
Okay, so what time period are we talking about? I mean, when we say Mishkan, we say Tabernacle, we're talking about the period of the Judges, somewhere between, like, when do you think Joshua comes in this? Because I know the dates are one of the big controversial issues.
Okay, so we see Joshua coming in earlier, maybe in the 14th century, beginning of the 14th century, what we would call LB2, Late Bronze 2, and continuing into the Iron 1 period.
All right, and what is that based on? Because there are others who will say that it's more like a minus 1250, like 100 years later, or 13th century. Doesn't fit in with the Jewish sources that say that the tabernacle was here in Shiloh for 369 years, and if the whole business moves out more towards minus 1,000, it ends up in Jerusalem, so actually minus 1400 date works nicely with that. But other archaeological sites, let's say like Chatzor, where Joshua, there's a layer of destruction from around minus 1250, minus 1260, just kind of throws a wrinkle into that. So what are you basing your earlier date on?
Okay, well, first of all, those 13th century dates I think we can attribute to Merneptah. We have the famous Merneptah stela. He's taking credit for destroying these cities here, and I think he did, just as he said. That's not the Israelite conquest. I think we've got to look more to the end of the 15th century, beginning of the 14th century, and that's where we're finding the sites that we've excavated at Kirbet el-Makatir, here at Shiloh, where we're finding the evidence.
Okay, and Joshua's altar, just to throw something in that was in my head, where you've got the scarabs that are inside the ashes up on Mount Eval that are also showing dates around 13th century. Okay. How are you explaining that?
Okay, there's also scarabs in that ash from the 15th century. There's a scarab there from Thutmose III that the excavator, Zertal, and those that published it assumed it must be commemorative because it had to be in the 13th century. What I'm saying is underneath that rectangular altar on Ibad, there's a round altar at the perfect geometric center that is older, and that's where the Thutmose III scarab comes from, and that's 15th century.
Okay, so basically, I just want our listeners to know that this is not clear. This is not clear, and this falls not just into the science of archaeology, but into some biblical denial and a lot of stuff out there, which also bleeds into politics and the rights of certain people to be here and who is the history. So this is a very, very big topic. But what you're doing here in Shiloh, which has, I mean, it's just so talked about in the Bible, especially in the book of Judges, and this place is on the map in so many ways, is of critical importance in kind of filling out this picture of which we know not enough.
That's right. And just a few feet from where we are, last season we excavated a ceramic pomegranate. And like tomorrow or the next day, there's an article coming out here in Israel in Judea Samaria Research Studies on this important pomegranate. Now, why does the pomegranate matter? When the Israelites came into the land, God told them you're going to have dates and figs and grapes and so forth, 7 fruits. But only one of the fruits goes into the presence of God in the Holy of Holies, and that's the pomegranate. What's on the hem of the priest's garments? Bells and pomegranates. So now we have found 2 pomegranates here at Shiloh. Very interesting, right? So here the Bible talks about a place that's sacred, a place where the tabernacle was. Now we're finding a material culture that matches that, what I would call verisimilitude.
You want to explain that word?
Okay, so when you read it in a source and then you find exactly what you would expect to find. For example, a site like Shiloh, when people came to pay their tithe in biblical times, they couldn't go to tabernacle.org and make a secure online donation. They couldn't write a check. They brought commodities. So what do we find? The entire perimeter of the site has storage rooms. Pomegranates, that's a priestly tabernacle motif. We're finding those types of things. So the bone deposit, and the bone deposit here, 2/3 of the bones are from the right side of the animal, which is the priestly portion. 1/3 is from the left. We start adding all of those things up, and we get a verisimilitude, a material culture that matches the literary description.
Now, somebody might say that your background as a Christian, you're coming in here expecting to find certain things. Okay, and that's been one of the criticisms, if you will, of biblical archaeology already for well over a century, is you come in with your Bible in your hand and you're looking to prove that book. Where do you fit on that?
Well, I take the Bible as a serious historical document. We use texts from Egypt, Amarna tablets, the Oxyrhynchus papyri. We go up to Mesopotamia, and we're dealing with the literature from there. I think it's ridiculous not to use the biblical text as well. And when it comes to Shilo, that's all we have. It's not mentioned in Mesopotamia or in Egypt, so of course I'm going to use the literary description. I'm just saying that I'm finding that it matches what we would expect it to be.
So you were telling me on the drive up here about that the bones with the right side, that, okay, Yisrael Finkelstein, who is one of the big, if not the head of the school that's really the biblical critics, as we call them, the minimalists from Tel Aviv University, he dug here in 1979, and he came up with a lot of bones. And now you told me that you've gone back now and seen a little line that perhaps he is not necessarily as steeped in the Bible as you are, might have missed the meaning of that, the right side.
Right. Professor Finkelstein is brilliant. I have no doubt about that. His presuppositions are different from mine, and maybe his interpretations might be different. He worked here for 4 seasons in the 1980s, so less than 5% of the site had been excavated, and that's why we came back, bringing now a major expedition with our newer technologies. We're opening up a larger area and then reinterpreting some of that data. And the one that you mentioned is that bone deposit. So in Area D on the east side of the site, there's a massive favisa, about the size of a gymnasium, full of bones. The bones are only from the biblical sacrificial system. In my view, the Israelites, as I said, arrive at the beginning of the 14th century, and that's what we have, and the pottery in the favisa matches that as well. The line you're referring to, he states that in their faunal analysis, 2/3 of the bones come from the right side of the animal, 1/3 from the left side of the animal. Now, of course, he didn't have an explanation for that. Being a Bible reader, I do. Leviticus 7 tells us that the right side of the animal is the priest's portion. That's who's living here at Shiloh. The people like Hannah and Elkanah, they don't live here. They're making pilgrimages here several times a year. The priests are the ones living here. So give me another explanation other than the one that I just gave you of why out of 100,000 bones, 2/3 are from the right side and 1/3 is from the left side.
Right. And now you said that when you send your bones and you find, 7,000 every dig down to the lab, you're going to ask them specifically for that analysis.
That's right. Starting this season, I'm going to include that in our faunal analysis. So we're always learning. It's so fun and rewarding to do this type of work because every day I learn something new. And the material culture here is so rich, and we're learning from each other all the time.
So Finkelstein also found burnt almonds and raisins, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yes. Raisins, of course, being grapes, and Shiloh is still, we're looking out now on vineyards. It's a beautiful wine area. That whole field of botanical archaeology, which is something that he really didn't have so much back then, that you've got now the analysis. So when you say you found ceramic pomegranates, have you also found pomegranate seeds, or what have you found in terms of the food that they actually ate?
That's a great question. Of course, we understand the meat that they're consuming. It's 4% pig bone in the pre-Israelite period, our stratum 8 and stratum 7. When we move into stratum 6, stratum 5, stratum 4, into an Israelite occupation, it drops below 1%. And that's very interesting. We see a shift there in their diet and their consumption of meat.
Well, because according to Jewish law, we don't eat pig. And you've got wild boar all over the place here, and other Canaanite altars. You've got a lot of boar present.
But that's a clear shift that's taken place. Now, as far as their vegetarian diet, what they're consuming, their faunal or floral diet, we do flotation in all of our loci each day. So that means we get a bunch of dirt from that particular locus, we fill that pail with water, stir it up, and the seeds float to the top. And then we have a special mesh that we collect those in. They dry overnight, and then we add the tag, the locus, the square, the pail, and then we're able to send those off for testing. It's still early in the dig to get results on that, but we'll know pretty soon.
All right. Any guesses, based on what you found last year?
Well, and I'm saying we're going to do the first 3 years together. So we're going to take seasons 1, 2, and 3, and then we're going to test them all together. So I don't have any results yet.
All right. Because that could be just totally fascinating.
I expect it to be.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's look. So what are you guys doing right now?
Okay,
You're almost
so-
wrapping it up. Some restoration work?
Yeah, our team is here on site this last week doing some work on the walls. So when we excavate them, we want to make sure that they're going to be stable for generations to come. And what we do is we remove all the dirt from the wall that we can with picks and brushes and trowels. Then we bring a hose and we pressure wash the wall to get all the rest of the dirt out. It dries overnight, and then the next day we use our special compound. It comes from Italy, and then we add in local dirt to it to give it the right color and all. And we created this system. It's like a big caulk gun. And so then we are able to shoot the material deep into the wall. That's the key to strengthening the wall. So we get it in deep, and then with brushes, we're able to finish off the outside. And that's what our team's working on right now.
So last week, as you know, I interviewed Lean Rittmeyer, who's just like, I mean, on another level altogether. And he's the wall guy,
Yep.
all right? He was talking about that, and he was here, and he was sketching the walls. Now, what he said is that this was a wall, like a platform, that the walls are so thick here that he doesn't think this was a residential place, but it was kind of a platform that had been used by the Canaanites for ritual worship. This is the center. And then Joshua and the Israelites come here and use the same place. So what are you thinking about that?
I don't think that it was used as a Canaanite sacrificial system. They're using that on assuming that the bone deposit dates to the Canaanite period. I see it as matching the Israelite period. But it is a platform, and I don't find a lot of residential activity on the inside. Maybe the houses in Area C from later in the Tabernacle period. So here's what I think, Eve. Remember how David is rationalizing, how can I build myself a house when God still dwells in a tent? So that's not foreign to the Israelite mind. So I think here at Shiloh, God is dwelling in a tent, and I think they continue to dwell in tents as well.
And you're not going to find the remnants of the tents, just like we haven't found the remnants of the tabernacle.
That's right. And we do have a lot of ancient structures, Bronze Age, that they were probably continuing to use on into the late Bronze Age and into the Iron Age.
All right, what have you found in terms of, let's say, lamps or other signs of human activity?
Oh, yes. We have hundreds of lamps that we have found from the biblical period. 2,000 pieces of pottery every day, so that's 40,000 this season. So every one of those is washed and analyzed. One thing we added this year is infrared and ultraviolet lighting. So we have built a dark room down at our headquarters here. And so inside that dark room, we have infrared and ultraviolet lighting. So then we can look at our objects and our pottery to see if there's anything that we're missing with the naked eye.
Now, you're not going to find writing at this point, are you?
Oh, sure.
Yeah?
Oh, absolutely. We have glyptic remains, and sometimes it's painted, sometimes it's inscribed. So if the paint is very faded, we may not see it with the naked eye, but under that infrared light, we would.
And that's something new, I think, in archaeology. I mean, they're going back now, let's say even to scrolls that they thought were blank, and definitely ostraca that they thought there was nothing on it. And now with new technology, they're able to see things that were faded and realizing, like maybe we threw out some stuff that was really important, but who knew?
Well, exactly. And speaking of technology, we now wet sift everything. So we dry sift everything, and then we wet sift it down below, and that's where 50% of our small finds are coming from. Scarabs, bulla this season. We have 2 bulla, scarabs, seal impressions, beads, pendants, all that would have been thrown away if we were not wet sifting. And that tells me that in the past, we as archaeologists, doing our best, we've been throwing away, go to all the expense and trouble, and then throw away half the evidence.
Wow. All right, but like you said, there's a learning curve, and there's technology,
But I think in the future, digs won't be able to justify operating without doing that. It's so substantial. And even in some of the old dump piles here, we've gone back to do tests, and we got inscriptions out of those dump piles. Yeah, I mean, even one inscription here from Shiloh in the past said, it was a figurine, Isis blessed the temple of, Isis blessed the temple of, broken inscription. The key word is missing. Does it say Shiloh? Does it have the name of God? And so wet sifting, we can find those little things like that. So,
By the way, ISIS doesn't mean Islamic State.
No. No, talking about the Egyptian ISIS, yeah.
Right. Yeah, we got to be careful there because context of today.
ISIS was here in antiquity. That would be a new one, wouldn't it?
That would totally be a new one. All right. So now you're going to cover this up until next year. What's the plan here?
Yeah, so I'm in the process now with our team of covering over the squares. We have a special felt material to reduce contamination in the off season. So when we get back next year, we don't have to clean up, the wash that's coming in, the rain and wind and so forth from the off season. So right next to us, Eve, is something interesting. If you want to have a look, in this wall, you see this stone right here in the corner?
Guys, you're going to be living vicariously through me. What can I tell you? Yeah.
There's a big stone, and it goes up like this on the edge, and we found nearby, not in the wall, but nearby, another one that's even more clear. We think we have a horned altar that has been disassembled and then put into secondary usage. Very common here in Israel.
So explain what a horned altar is.
All right, only 7 have ever been found in Israel. And in the biblical period, they would build an altar with horns or raised areas on the edges. And so they could either tie a sacrifice down, or somebody needed mercy. Remember, they would go to the cities of refuge and grab hold of the horns of the altar.
Right.
And then the
That's how you say it in Hebrew. Right.
And the manslayer, would not be able to, they would get mercy, in other words.
Right.
And
Safe
so,
zone.
That's
Safe
right.
zone. Yeah.
And it's really pretty cool because, the sacrificial system, I know in the modern mind, this is gross and bloody, but it gives us a means of redemption or of connection. Without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sin, Leviticus 17:11. And so it gives people a way to mend their fractured relationship with God and with each other.
So what's the explanation about why it'd be broken and stuck in a wall?
Okay, well, the exact same thing happened at Beersheba. They took it apart in one time period, maybe one of the reforms. Hezekiah, Josiah, we're still in the process of looking at the dating of it. And then later period, this is an early Roman, late Second Temple period structure here. They don't even know what it is, of course, at that point, and they rebuild it into that wall.
Right, because we're talking about hundreds of years later, and the Reformation, which you can read about in the Bible, is the Jews are going off and, the Israelites and worshiping other idols, and these 2 kings are like, whoa, guys, enough, and they go around the land and break, and we see it in the Bible, they break the Bamot, they break these kind of breakaway altars, if you will, because they want people to be coming to Jerusalem and coming to the temple.
That's right. And of course, there's all kinds of syncretism that's going on in those times too. Like right across the highway at Givat Harel, just 1 kilometer from here, there's a massive 4-horned altar there. And I think it's probably pagan. Here, right next to Shilo. If you want to worship the God of the Bible, you come to Shilo. You don't go 1 kilometer over here to this massive altar. So I think it, again, verisimilitude. You read this in the text, and then you see a material culture that matches it.
You think it could be the altar of Micah?
Well, that's a thought. That's a thought.
That's an interesting story in the Bible also. There's kind of an alternate altar on the other side of the street. And even though it's pagan, they're very welcoming and hospitable. And here you have a very interesting discussion really about doing the right thing but in the wrong way versus doing the wrong thing but in the right way. So here in Shilo, maybe the priests were corrupt. People weren't coming here, which we see because at the end of the book of Judges, there's a description about how to get to Shilo.
Right.
It's south of Livonah. It's over here from Beit El. Now, if some people knew how to get here, you wouldn't have to have the directions.
Well, yeah. First Samuel is very clear about the corruption. Eli is righteous, but his sons are very wicked.
Right.
And it says that's why the Lord judged Shiloh. And then later in Jeremiah, chapter 7, verse 12, God tells Jeremiah, when there's pending judgment on Jerusalem, he tells Jeremiah, from Jerusalem, go to Shiloh. See what I did there. Okay, in other words, don't think I won't judge you. Look what I did there.
Which is a huge message, I think, to religious leadership of all types. That if you are doing the wrong thing, and what we think about maybe the sons of Eli was #MeToo, something was going on there, you're going to drive people away from God. And your responsibility as a religious leader, whether it's, pedophiles in the Catholic Church or whatever it is, which is why I meet a lot of lapsed Catholics these days, you are driving people away from the very thing that you represent because of your terrible behavior as a human being. And this is, the Bible, the messages in the Bible are just resonate all the time in so many different ways. They're timeless. They really are.
They are. How tragic, that these sons of Eli are here and, they're hitting on these women when they're coming. How tragic, that But
The
that's
powerful
human
men
nature, you know?
taking advantage of women is like maybe the oldest story in the book and not just the Bible book. So what else did you find here? Like anything, like what were your exciting
Sure.
finds
Well,
last
I mean,
month?
our glyptic finds are always interesting. The scarab from this season is very old, like 13th dynasty. So from the foundational phase of Shiloh, which would have been about 1750 BC. The bula is very interesting. Those are almost impossible to find in an archaeological square. It's a tiny piece of clay covered in dirt. Even in dry sift, you can't see that, but only in wet sifting can we get that type of information.
And it's got names. It's got writing on it in ancient
hieroglyphic
Hebrew.
symbols on
Oh, it's
it.
hieroglyphic, not paleo, not paleo Hebrew.
At first, we thought we were seeing Paleo-Hebrew symbols, but no, it's hieroglyphic. And then we have a jar handle that is stamped with a scarab also this season, which is rare. So that means someone important here that would have belonged to that person. So now we're in the process of studying those and preparing them for publication.
And how about like entries? I remember last year you told me that there was possibly a
Oh, boy,
door
do I have something for you.
or something.
Okay, well, we better walk down and have a look down there.
Okay, let's do it.
Just yesterday when I was driving from Givat Harel, I looked across, which I've done many times, and I looked across at the northern slope of Shiloh and I saw something I'd never seen before. What looks like an approach road from the north.
Really?
And so I'm going to go down today and actually explore this, which leads right to where I've been theorizing that we may have a northern gate. And the Bible mentions the gate of Shiloh. It's never been found. So I'm not going on record as saying that we have the gate of Shiloh. I'm just saying we have a feature that very well could be that we're exploring.
Well, you have the area of Shiloh itself, and then you have the Tabernacle area to the north of it, running on an east-west axis, incidentally, just like the city of David and the Temple Mount, laid out in that same way. But you would have had to get out from Shiloh to the Tabernacle area. So the fact that there is a northern gate, it makes perfect sense.
And the spring is over here on the north, too. So I don't think they're carrying water all the way around to the south and then all the way back to the north. It's illogical. By the way, we're passing by. Do you remember Gladys from last year? Yes. This is Gladys the gorgeous glacis. Okay, so the glacis is the slope, we're covering it now, that protects the foundation. And so say hi to Gladys as we're going
Hi,
by.
Gladys.
Yes,
Nice to see you
she's a sweet
again.
girl.
So, one of the things that's interesting about Jewish practice is that sometimes halakha, Jewish law, is superseded by an expert. For example, we're supposed to fast on Yom Kippur on the Day of Atonement. But if your doctor says that you're not well enough to fast, not only can you not fast, you're not allowed to fast. Okay, the doctor is the expert, and you're not supposed to get sick because of this biblical thing. Now, one of the interesting things in Shiloh is that it fits into something, one of the customs that we have on Purim. All right, Purim is our really fun holiday that commemorates the miracle of Mordechai and Esther, right, the book of Esther, of what is somewhat of a precedent and hasn't really gone away, of Jews trying to stay alive in the diaspora, even when we've got, the leaders there aren't finally, let's just say aren't. They're trying to get rid of us for one reason or the other. So we've got this great holiday of Purim, and there is a law that there is some of the places celebrate Shushan Purim, meaning the day after Purim, the 15th of Adar instead of the 14th. And that is places that were walled during the time of Joshua. So, for example, Jerusalem. Now, in Shiloh, the people who live here now have been celebrating regular Purim, the 14th of Adar. But some of your work as a Christian American archaeologist, if you find a wall that existed in the time of Joshua, you're actually going to change when the people of this area celebrate a Jewish holiday.
It's amazing. I have had several local residents come ask me about that. And there's no doubt. The wall you're looking at here, Joshua saw that when he arrived.
So that's wild. So at some point, you may find some rabbis coming down here and really talking to you about this and changing what the Jews in this area do.
I have had locals come in and ask me that very question for that reason, but there is absolutely zero certainty that wall was here when Joshua
Zero
arrived.
uncertainty. No.
Zero uncertainty. We're positive that this wall was here when Joshua arrived.
Wow. That's amazing. But were people here? Because,
Yes.
when Joshua comes with everybody, it doesn't say in the text that they conquered Shiloh.
No, but I think the reason that there's no conflict here, which the name, of course, means tranquility, Shiloh, is I think this is part of the Shechem city-state. So in the late Bronze Age, you have the Megiddo city-state, the Jerusalem city-state, the Hatzor city-state, and the Shechem city-state. All of them fight the Israelites except Shechem.
Well, even when the blessings and curses are giving, and we're sitting right in Shechem, I mean, Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim are right there. So if there's a problem with the people of Shechem, they wouldn't let the whole nation stand there. So clearly, and also it's not on the list of cities that Joshua conquers.
He didn't have to. Okay, so when they go to Shechem, what does the text say? All Israel joined in together, alien and citizen alike. The Shechemites join in. Okay, they're embracing monotheism, essentially, probably going back to Abraham's deep ties at Shechem. Now, I believe that Shiloh was part of the Shechem city-state. And that's why they encounter no resistance here, because the archaeology shows that there were people living here, but there's no record of any conflict.
That also maybe could be why Shiloh is, in essence, an important place, because after the rape of Dinah, when Jacob, let's say they subdue Shechem, and that's like a whole difficult story, maybe the battle that they have, because assuming that there is some kind of rumble after that the locals don't take it lying down, that the prince of Shechem and his cohorts are killed, maybe there's some kind of victory here in this valley, and that's why it's seen, or it's in the historical memory as a place, because where there's miracles, those are the places you're going to be drawn to, where you feel God met you there.
Right. Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
Is there another explanation for why Shiloh becomes where the tabernacle is set up?
The only other thing that comes to my mind is that Joshua was from the tribe of Ephraim.
Right.
And so
this is the allotment of Ephraim.
It has to go somewhere, so it may as well go in my territory,
exactly.
you know.
Yeah.
But I do think that the Shechem city-state, that Shiloh is part of that, and that's why we see no resistance in this area. They join in, they confederate with the Israelites. And I think you see it in the archaeological record, too.
You're not finding remains of a battle here, or a layer of ash.
No. I mean, we have destruction layers, but not from that time period. Yeah.
You got a destruction layer from around minus 1050, those almonds and raisins, which points to the Philistines coming here.
We do now. I might say more like 1075. We're quibbling over a few years, but we do now have a very clear iron one destruction layer under a floor level. So we have a sealed locus, a plastered floor, and underneath that we have the destruction layer. It's probably the same one that Finkelstein. The Bible doesn't come out and tell us that the Philistines destroyed, but we can infer that there's a likelihood. Yeah.
Right. Well, from the archaeology, which is just so amazing. That word that I can't pronounce, I used before, verisimilitude, right?
There you go.
There you go. That's my new word for the day, where it really just comes together.
That in Hebrew, how do you say verisimilitude in Hebrew? There's got to be a word.
I haven't a clue. Any listeners, please welcome. You're welcome to write to me and tell me.
All right. Let me show you what's going on here, Eve. So Gladys, our glacis, our gorgeous glacis, she ends right here. This massive wall, she's not over here.
Right.
All right. Okay. So as an archaeologist, I ask myself, why? Why don't, because she should be. This is the glacis protects the city. Why not? Well, as we excavate in this area, we begin to find other clues. So let's walk around. Actually, I think we can go safely up here. Just, watch out for this wire.
Okay. I don't think that Scott knows that a few years ago I broke my ankle here in Shiloh while guiding. So, I'm very, very respectful.
I'm going to help you here.
Okay.
All right.
Very respectful of this area because, and Eli, of course, the priest broke his neck, so at least I only broke my ankle.
In fact, yes, if you're right about the gate being here, we're going to take you to where he fell.
Okay, I get to see where Eli fell.
All right, so here we're going down, and I'm going to give you a hand down here. Okay.
Note to self, don't wear a skirt the next time you're doing this. Okay.
So now we're standing. Look at what you see here. We found a Byzantine patch on the wall covering something, blocking something here. What were they trying to block? Okay, now we have two pieces of evidence. The glacis missing in this area, and we have a big, thick patch built against this.
You're talking period. Like Byzantine is 4th, 5th, 6th century. You're talking about way after this glacis is built.
This. That's right. Okay. So when they come here, they're trying to block up something. Now, do you see the two things? There's no glacis in antiquity, but there was something that later people want to block up. So now I'm more curious than I was before. So we remove the patch and look at what you see. You have what appears to be a threshold. You have symmetry here. This is what's called a postern gate, a secondary gate, all right, into the city. It's small on purpose so that it can be easily blocked up in time of conflict, all right? So, of course, we wanted to go then to the inside of the wall to see if we have the same thing. And so when we went over there, we went down through a destruction level and we got down to the same thing. So that this wall right here, if you see, that lines up with the wall that we have on the other side. And so now we've got to finish excavating all this, but I think there's a possibility that we have a postern gate here at Shilo, which would be an entrance into the city. And, of course, the Bible mentions the gate of Shilo. We don't know if that's the gate on the south or the gate on the north.
And if it's blocked up in the Byzantine period, could it be because of the wars that they were having with the Samaritans in the area? Because we've got other evidence in other parts of Shiloh, like a weird, it almost looks like a safe room, like a double-doored room that they're thinking maybe is, remnant, because that went on for a long time and that was pretty bloody.
Well, let me just say that's a very insightful question. So to all of Eve's listeners, Eve knows her history. That was you're asking the right questions. Yeah. In the fifth century, we have a series of revolts called the Samaritan revolts. And the Byzantines, once they got in charge, they learned what all people discover who have been out of power, and once they get into power, that it's far easier to criticize than it is to govern. There's a burden with governance. And they were, quite frankly, heavy-handed, I think, in the way they dealt with the Samaritans. The Samaritans revolted. They destroyed churches and structures in a series of revolts.
Mm-hmm. So maybe this is for that. You have no idea.
It could be, but the larger question for me is that they were blocking something up. There was already an opening into the city that they did not want to be there. So is that from the biblical period? If so, then are you standing where Eli stood?
Wow. That's pretty heavy.
Now, if that's not scary enough, let me add to it. Right where Tanya's working over here, just a few feet to the south of Tanya, is where the director of the Danish excavation in 1932, because they started in 22, Hans Kier, he was working right here when he became mortally ill. They took him back to Jerusalem. He never recovered. And so Tanya's gotten on my bad side, you can see. So I've sent...
Also wearing a mask.
So
she's not wearing a mask. Tanya!
So I sent her to this area to repent. But
something about the Carter expedition comes to mind. No. Okay. Yeah.
But think about it, the Eli in the gate and Hans Kier in this area, just, it's interesting. We're, of course, not superstitious.
So, we're not superstitious at all, but there are certain areas that do have vibes, I suppose. What are you explaining here with this fill that's kind of looks almost arch-like?
Okay, well, first of all, let me say, Eve, that's a very good question. See, to all of Eve's listeners, she's asking all the right questions, okay? Very observant. We could use you on the dig. You're right, that is a fill. That is Danish dump. So when they excavated those storage rooms, they dumped here, but you can see that it's very clear beyond that. They did not excavate that. They thought they were at the bottom, but there were still 2 meters. So that's their dump there. And so we'll remove that next season so we can get to the cleaner material.
The Danes are the ones who really zeroed in on this being Shiloh? Like they're the ones who found the inscription in Greek that says pretty much, yes, JC welcomes you to Shiloh?
Sure.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they came in 1922, they did an exploration, and then from 26 to 32, they did 4 seasons of work before the death of Kier. So, yes, they had the vision of coming here. One of my dreams was to get them re-involved. And I'm planning a big celebration that you must come to in 2022. It's called Shiloh 2022. It will be the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the launch of archaeological work here, and they're already with us. They came this season and last season, the Danish did. So they're working with us once again, and they're planning on coming for the celebration. Wow,
that's nice that you're already planning that. Who knows what you're going to find in the meantime? Anything else that you got this year?
I think that the architecture we've talked about, the glyptic finds, the possible horned altar, those are the highlights for this season.
Right, and the coins and all that usual stuff?
154 coins this season. We're very systematic about those, and they're mainly Second Temple period coins, names you would recognize, Alexander Jannaeus, John
the Hasmoneans, right?
Yeah, and then on into, Herod and his sons and grandsons, and then Pilate, Nero, Claudius, all the usual suspects that you would expect in that time period.
Wow. And going through past the destruction of the Second Temple into the Bar Kokhba revolt, 2nd century. Hadrian, you got anything from there?
A little bit from the Bar Kokhba period, a little bit of pottery, and occasionally a coin. So it seems like there was a little bit of reuse. We have a lot from the first revolt, but just a tiny bit from the Bar Kokhba.
You know, last night I was reading a report that was put out by Javier Raviv, guy who lives in this area. He's doctor. He's a great guy, doctoral, and he was talking. He did his doctoral dissertation on an area not far from here that was pretty much destroyed. I mean, the Arabs in the village next door decided to use it for agriculture. They came upon this really incredible fortress, but of course, once they uncovered it, it was looted, and he's just going through the pottery and the big mess. How is this place secured during the year?
Okay, this is, thank God, the most secure site in all of Israel. The modern community of Shilo has built a security fence all the way around the Tel and the modern city, and so thank God for that. We fought vandalism for decades at the other sites that we've excavated. And here we can actually leave our tools in our square. And so this is a credit to the local community here and the partnership that we have with them. I mean, we're here by invitation, and we're working very diligently, but we have a great partnership with this community.
So who are you working with? You've got your university?
Yes, our consortium is called Associates for Biblical Research, and we have 11 universities that are part of that consortium. And this is like Lee University, University of Pikeville, University of Northwestern. So it's a series of universities that participate under this umbrella organization, and then I'm the director of the Associates for Biblical Research.
And how does this fit in with Israel Antiquities Authority?
Okay, we're licensed, of course, through the Civil Administration of Judea Samaria, which is the branch of the IAA that covers Judea Samaria. And so we're licensed. We've been working here. This is our 40th anniversary, by the way. We've excavated starting in 1979 at Khirbet Nisia, Sagot, and then Khirbet Makatir, and now this is our third season at Shilo. So 40 years of excavation here. And so it's a long-term relationship, but we do apply each year, and we're licensed through them. The license comes in my name, and then the sponsoring institution is ABR.
Right. And there's got to be a lot of trust involved.
Well, it does, and that comes over years of doing the right thing the right way. Our reports are excellent, our work is excellent, and they know that. And so it's actually, when my boss comes by, it's to celebrate. I mean, we drink coffee and celebrate the great things that are going on. I hear people say they're breathing down my neck, and that's not at all the case with us.
Mm-hmm. And the publishing is a big deal, because that's one of the complaints that a lot of people have about archaeologists is you get in there and you dig, but then it can take the report 20 or 25 years to come out, and because that's not the fun part. But you guys are right on top of that.
We're really diligent about that. As I said, this week we have a major publication coming out here in Israel, and so we're always staying on top of that publication. Someone told me he couldn't get a license, but when I talked to the Antiquities Authority, they said he won't publish, he won't turn in his stuff. Well, right. There you go. You have to do the right thing the right way. One Israeli archaeologist told me that, how did he put it? Excavating is like making a baby, and publishing is like rearing a child. So, yeah, okay. There you go.
That sounds like something an Israeli archaeologist would say. You guys aren't seeing it, but Scott's blushing.
I had to say, I think you're right.
So what do you do when you're not here?
Okay, so I'm the provost at a seminary back in Texas called the Bible Seminary. And we have an archaeology program, an institute that I'm the director of also. And so 3 of my students are on site right now today, but I've had maybe 12 that were here in the course of the dig. So like the other institutions that are involved, they're required to do a certain amount of field work. But as provost, that means I oversee the academic program, so supervise faculty and students and so forth.
This is like the ultimate field trip, huh?
For me, it is. And so, I mean, our philosophy at the Bible Seminary is that the world is our classroom. And so, yeah, we do classroom instruction, but my students are learning here in the field more than they could ever learn in the classroom. So we're big believers in that.
Right. Plus, it's a great opportunity to come here to the Holy Land and to see other sites and to just kind of fill in their theological world or just their knowledge of the world in general.
Geography, chronology, it all comes, together when you're traveling. This platform is disappearing, by the way. So when tourists come here in another year or two, they'll stand on that path below, and they're not going to see any of this. All they're going to see is the massive wall, the same thing Joshua saw, and Gladys. They're going to see the wall, they're going to see Gladys and the storage rooms. Shilo is an amazing site, but right now there's not much to see. Mm-hmm. Okay, when they come here in another year or two, they're going to have a lot to look at.
And I know that the site here, the people who run the site, they're trying to do kind of 21st century things. They've got a great room here, like a hologram. I don't even know what you'd call it, a 3D representation of the tabernacle and explaining the meaning of that. And they've got some screens around here trying to give people a visual of what would have been here, which is important. Otherwise, you do come and it's like just a pile of rocks.
Well, that's a pet peeve of mine, is going to an archaeological site, even as an archaeologist. There's no signage. Well, we're just making educated guesses at what's there. So what does it cost us to put up good signage, And so I guarantee your listeners that we're going to have state-of-the-art signage here at Shilo.
Okay. Well, so you guys are going to have to come and visit after that. There's going to be no excuses.
That's right. And, of course, we welcome our Israeli friends to participate with us as well. They can even come out and dig for a day. We have a program at no cost. I know in Jerusalem they're doing that, but you pay to do it. You can come here at no cost and excavate in this sacred soil.
And that'll be next June because you're wrapping it up for this year?
Yeah, next May. So we'll be back in mid-May next year for 5 more weeks.
And you got Frankie Snyder working here. I've known her for years. I mean, she's one of the sifting experts.
Well, I have a dream team working with me. So not only Frankie, Leah Tramer from Ariel University, Leora Freud from Tel Aviv University, Peretz Reuven from Hebrew University, Yoav Farhi is a top numismatist here in Israel. So we're very integrated with 4 different Israeli universities, with Israeli staff. So it's not like we're here and they're there. No, we're one big family. We're learning from them. They're learning from us. And it's really a dynamic synergy.
And I think everybody comes with their own worldview to here. So you've got a little more of the Bible maybe than somebody else. So you're going to see, let's say, with the bones from the right side, you're going to say, whoa, that sounds familiar. And some of the Israelis who know maybe more about the culture of the Middle East or some of that are able to bring in their piece. So it's an orchestra.
It really is. And so my job, which I think is fascinating, I think I have the best job in the world, I get to then coordinate all that and get this whole team. It's like a startup business. We start up and we run the business for 7 weeks and then we shut it down until the next year. But to coordinate all of that activity, which continues on the rest of the year, by the way, once I'm back home, I'm still working with all the experts on all the reports. To me, that's fascinating.
And what do you think of the level of the Israeli archaeologists here? Because back in the day, Deaver, like all the original guys, you didn't really have Israeli archaeology. I mean, the state's only 70 some odd years old. So you had foreigners coming in, doing whatever they did. In the case of like McAllister, making a lot of mess that we're still trying to recover from in places like Megiddo. But what are you thinking of the level here of archaeology now in Israel?
Oh, I think it's every bit as at the standard as the American archaeologist. My only regret is that much of Israeli archaeology has become totally secular. When I lectured at Hebrew University a few years ago, I talked about Bible and archaeology like I always do, bringing it together. The students, these were PhD students, they loved what I was talking about. They said, this is fascinating. You're the first one all year to use the Bible. And I think, this is sad, okay? So that's my regret. But as far as methodologically, I think that they're doing fantastic work, yeah.
Well, more than sad. I'm going to say that's tragic.
It is tragic to have that kind of level of anti-biblical bias. And that doesn't mean everyone across the board, of course. Right. But I'm just saying that's the general trend, and I'm out to change that.
Well, good, because, that's just good. If the Christian gives the Jews a kick in the pants when it comes to the Bible, I'm all for that.
Well, that's right. And I think we should engage in the arena of ideas, okay? And it doesn't bother me if someone has a different view. The old saying, where there are 2 archaeologists, there are 3 opinions. That doesn't bother me in the least. I want to embrace that. Those who maybe we don't see things the same, let's learn from each other. Let's engage in the arena of ideas openly, because I'm really comfortable with my ideas. And if I'm wrong on some point, I'd like to know so that I can get better.
And I do know, because I have interviewed archaeologists over the years who do see, they in their personal lives believe in the Bible or even observant Jews. Naama, wow, her last name just flew out of my head. She's digging at Tel Abel Ma'akah. She actually invited me to come up there in July. What? I just forgot her last name, went right out of my head. It's a hyphenated one.
Navapanitz, you're talking about?
No, but she works with her. She's over at Hebrew U. And, and this is definitely part of the history, part of the culture, part of, what unites us here. So, I think it's phenomenal, and it's unfortunate if that's being kind of kicked out of the curriculum in certain places.
Yeah, well, we're going to keep it in the forefront and continue to engage in that arena of ideas. And I think that synergistically, when we mix it all up together, there's a lot of really good things happening in Israeli archaeology.
Yeah, and you're making it very hard for the anti-Bible people to sleep well at night.
Oh, that breaks my heart.
I know. I could just see he's got such a big smile on his face. Yeah, keep it up. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This was great. I'm heading up to Ariel University actually right now. They've got a conference on new finds in Judea and Samaria. Something I just read yesterday is that in an army base in the south, the southern Judean hills, they had some paratroopers uncovered, and the paratroopers themselves, I think it was paratroopers, were working. They uncovered a fortress from the First Temple period, which fits in with Azekah and Lachish, where you'd have these like fires, where you would signal to each other. They're thinking it's one of those because it's on a high hill, and you actually had soldiers there who said, in terms of, let's say, the Bible, how moving it was for them to be able to uncover something that had been used by Israelite soldiers so long ago to defend their land. And the connection was just really emotional for them.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, and as a Christian, those things, of course, are important to me too. The roots of Christianity are in the soil of Judaism, and so we share the same scriptures, and so we get the same sort of fulfill. I think sometimes people come by. We have groups all day coming by, like, what are you guys doing here? What's your connection? It's a very deep connection. I mean, these are the soil, the scriptures. We share this in common. And so
I know you consider this holy work.
I do. I mean, I often daily think about Psalm 102:14. Blessed are those who love your dust and cherish your stones. And for me, and it's all over me, the stones and the dust, to me it really is sacred. And our team, they take that same level of proprietorship too.
Yeah, no, I see it. Last year I was able to interview a couple of them, and definitely for them, this was not just like spending the summer doing a dig. This was really uncovering the Bible, uncovering history, uncovering the lives of people whom we've read about to the point that we think we know them. Like if Joshua started climbing up this hill, I don't think either of us would even be all that surprised because there's some timelessness here. There's something going on here that's bigger than we are. And being able to be a part of uncovering it is just absolutely so phenomenal.
Well, there's a language of the material culture. The pottery is talking to me. Now, and that may sound strange that I'm hearing voices. The bones are talking to me. Mm-hmm. The stones are telling their story. And as we learn their language and we calibrate more and more, the picture is like in a spiral, getting closer and closer to coming into focus of what happened at this amazing site in antiquity.
Right. And with all that you've uncovered, there's so much left to do. So,
well, I think we have job security for at least the next few years.
Exactly. All right. I want to see you hobbling through here like at age 90, kicking some of the workers with your cane or something.
Well, as our Arab friends would say, inshallah,
Exactly.
God willing.
All right, guys. That was great. Thank you so much, Dr. Scott Stripling.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Appreciate your interest.
All right, every year. This is it. Now we got 2 years running. I'm going to be back here next year. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Eve Harrow, Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network. Thanks to Tabitha. Thanks to Ben. If some of you are new to the station, to the podcast, you can look up my website, eveharrow with .com to see what else I'm up to. Because I take Israel out of Israel, for those of you who can't get here. So I go to the States, to Canada, to England, working on a trip to Australia now, to bring some of what I do here out to you guys, or as they would say, the mountain to Muhammad, right? So if any of you are interested in that, please be in touch with me, and I would love to bring Israel to you. In the meanwhile, take care, everybody. Have an amazing week. Eve Harrow, goodbye for now.
Right where the Qassam rocket hit. It's a matter of centimeters.
Josh Haston here, host of Israel Uncensored. And on my show this week, an interview with Rabbi Dov Fendel, the head of the Hesder Yeshiva in Sderot. This past week, a Hamas-fired rocket scored a direct hit on one of the Hesder buildings. Hear what it's like to live under the constant threat of rocket fire.
Miracles don't always happen. And even in the media, everybody spoke about it Thursday night and Friday morning. And then everything was forgotten.
For the full show, check out Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.